I want to tell you a little bit about my first dog, Molly. She was a Bernese mountain dog. I got her as a puppy. She was 8 weeks old when I brought her home. And I thought I knew everything there was to know about dog behaviour and training. I'd read all the books, I'd spoken to all the experts, I'd spoken to her breeder. What could go wrong? So I brought home this lovely 8-week-old puppy, and everything started very well, of course. As a puppy, all she was interested in was exploring a new environment and picking things up, tasting them, playing with them. She was a joy. And then she hit adolescence and everything changed. She became really very difficult to handle. She was very mouthy, and she was a Bernese mountain dog, which meant she wasn't a small puppy. So as this behaviour started to escalate, it became more and more difficult to manage. So I'd asked for some help from a local dog trainer, and he came to the house and he showed me lots of techniques that he thought would help me to solve these problems. His diagnosis was that she was just a dominant dog that was just in the prime of her teenage months, trying to take over the house, assert her dominance, mostly just on me. She didn't do this to anybody else in the household. Any visitors thought she was the sweetest, most wonderful dog. But to me, she was really very difficult to manage, and I spent most of my time with her. At the time, a lot of the training techniques were based on dominance theories, on managing dominance and submission. They were basically just ways to bully a dog into doing what you wanted. But this didn't really feel right to me. And I tried some of the techniques that he'd showed me that didn't involve any kind of hands-on or physical training. But actually all that ended up happening was that her behavior got worse. And I wasn't going to ask another dog trainer to come and help me. I assumed they would just give me the same advice. So I hit the books, I hit the library, what little there was of an internet back then, and I started doing my research, and I tried to develop my own techniques that would help her. But it didn't take me very long, really, into my research to realise that this wasn't a dominant dog trying to take over the household and run the world. This was just a really anxious dog who wasn't coping very well in the environment that we'd given her. She wasn't coping with other dogs around her. She wasn't coping with being told what to do. She wasn't coping with her environment and the other things that were in it. And this all came out in her behaviour. She wasn't being a dominant dog. She just couldn't cope. So the more I tried these techniques that had been given to me, of course, the less she was able to cope and the more her behaviour got worse and worse. So thankfully, I was able to research techniques that would help her. And once I'd realised that actually she was just very anxious and she wasn't being a dominant dog, this made things much easier for me because I could actually start researching the kinds of techniques that would boost her confidence and make us bond together better. A couple of problems that she had were the sorts of things that probably all of you guys are struggling with right now. I couldn't walk her on a lead. And because I wasn't able to walk her on a lead, she was so big and strong and heavy. She wasn't getting enough exercise that she needed. So therefore, that part of her behavior was impacting on everything else. Once I was able to start taking her for walks, she was much calmer because she'd had that energy release that she needed. She was quite reactive to other dogs, so I was never going to be able to let her off her lead. But once I'd been able to help her calm down and cope better with other dogs nearby, gradually I was able to reintroduce her back to other dogs, and I could let her off her lead again, which again had another really, really good impact on her behavior. It really had a positive effect. So just being able to take her out for a walk and get her off her lead and get her to socialize, she was able to explore her environment more freely. She was able to meet people. All of those things really just helped her in terms of her mental health. So she was actually feeling like she was behaving more like a dog. She could sniff things, she could run, she could play, she didn't have to play, she could avoid dogs if she wanted to, she could make friends, she could communicate with them. So all these really nice doggy things she was getting a chance to do. And then at home, we were really working more on boosting up her confidence there too. And as we did that, she started to relax more at home. She wasn't full of pent-up energy, so that wasn't adding to the problem. And then we were able to relax her at home more. And gradually all these behaviors went away. She stopped jumping up at people, at me. She stopped trying to mouth. And when I say she was mouthing, she was really mouthing. She was grabbing, she was tearing clothes, she was leaving bruises. It was really quite intimidating and scary. And if it hadn't have been for the fact that she wasn't doing it to anybody else, I'm not sure whether the outcome would have been the same, whether I'd been able to have kept her. The fact that she was only doing it to me made this much easier for me because I was able to work with her. And I didn't feel that other people were being put at risk. She was, as I say, a really very big dog. And when she started to relax and she started to work with me and we started working together and I focused less on obedience, you know, some of the things that they tell you whenever the dog's jumping up is you should teach them to sit. But if they're very stressed and not coping, then that's just another thing for them to not cope with. So we worked on calming, taking our time, patience. I spent a lot of time standing still, doing nothing, ignoring behavior, turning my back on her a lot, waiting for her to calm down, and then re-engaging with her. And over time, this had a brilliant effect. And sooner or later, we're best friends again, and we're able to take her out. She turned out to be the absolute best dog. But what was really great about Molly, as my first ever dog, she taught me so much about patience. She taught me so much about psychology, behavior of dogs and people, because this is not just about managing a dog's behavior. This is about managing your own. In fact, it's probably more about managing your own than it is about anything else. When you're calm and you're relaxed and you're patient, really great things start to happen. So between us, we figured this out. And at this stage, of course, I'd become completely addicted to the subject of dog behavior. And here I am 20 years later, telling you about her and using her as an example of what can be done and what can be achieved. Of course, back then I had no idea what I was doing and I was kind of just figuring this out as I went. So that took a good sort of few months before I felt like really would solve the problem. Of course, now I've been able to streamline those techniques a little bit and I can do it a lot quicker. I know which parts of it worked better, which parts of it didn't work very well at all, what was getting in the way, what was making things easier. So 20 years later, you've got the refined version of what I initially started all those years ago with Molly. So I have a lot to thank her for, and also probably a lot to be sorry for, because she went through all of that in the first stage. And I thought I knew better, but I didn't. And this is a common story. I think that a lot of people that come to me will tell me that maybe they've had lots of dogs, or they've read lots of books, or they feel like they really know what they're about to take on, and then this puppy comes into their life and completely throws it all out of the water. Mostly it's just because they're different, you know. Not every dog fits the mold of every others, and that's something, again, I've learned over the years, is that not every technique works perfectly for every dog, and they all need to be tweaked slightly. Maybe they need to be combined with other techniques to make them work. But yeah, so that was Molly's story. She lived to the ripe old age of 12 years old, and once she'd learned how to relax and she was able to socialize with people and I'd worked with her, I was able to introduce her to all kinds of different people, including a group of disabled people that lived not too far, and often we'd meet them in the park and they would love to come over and sit with her and pet her, and she was just the most patient and wonderful girl with those kinds of people and children as well. So a really happy ending to a story that perhaps might not have ended so well had I continued using those sort of bullyish techniques and treated her like a dominant dog, which she wasn't, of course. Hopefully that has given a little bit of inspiration, and I'll speak to you again soon. Take care for now. Bye-bye.